A Mexican reporter tried to do a stand-up in the northern city of Reynosa, but with bullets and grenades flying just below this bridge, he and the cameraman were forced to lie on the concrete.
She would kidnap her victims, cut them into pieces, and then dump their body parts on their families' doorsteps as a warning. These actions defined Melissa La China Calderon, one of the few women ever to command a cartel hit squad in Mexico's bloody drug war.
Mexican networks and newspapers have to make some tough choices on this drug war. They have to decide how to tell the story, how much blood and guts to show the public, and how to protect themselves.
How did this woman transform into a commander responsible for over 150 murders in a world dominated by machismo? In this documentary, we follow La China's evolution from cartel foot soldier in 2005 to leader of an elite killing unit. We examine her operational methods and psychology that earned her a fearsome reputation, exceeding that of her male counterparts, revealing the brutal reality of the cartel world. What happens when one of the world's most powerful drug lords disappears from the scene? The capture of El Chapo Guzman in 2014 left a deadly opportunity within the Sinaloa cartel's hierarchy. The man who had ruled with an iron grip for decades was suddenly gone, creating a power vacuum that would trigger a bloody chain reaction across Mexico's drug territories. For years, El Chapo had maintained a delicate balance of power within the cartel's structure. His arrest removed the gravitational center that kept rival factions in check. Nowhere was this collapse of order more evident than in Baja California Sur, particularly in the city of La Paz. Before 2014, La Paz truly embodied its name, which translates to peace in Spanish. The coastal city recorded barely 1 or 2 murders monthly, making it relatively safe in a country often plagued by cartel violence. Its tranquility made it valuable territory, both for its beauty and strategic location. The Baja Peninsula forms a natural corridor for drug trafficking, connecting mainland Mexico to California, with numerous small ports and isolated beaches ideal for moving product north. La Paz controls access to both the Sea of Cortez and Pacific Ocean, managed quietly by the Sinaloa cartel, with minimal violence to avoid federal attention. El Chapo's absence changed everything. 2 major factions immediately moved to secure control: forces loyal to Damaso Lopez Núñez, El Licenciado, once El Chapo's right-hand man, versus those aligned with El Chapo's sons and longtime partner Ismael El Mayo Zambada. The united criminal enterprise quickly devolved into internal warfare. The geography that made La Paz valuable now made it worth killing for. The conflict began with targeted assassinations and disappearances of those refusing to change allegiances. By early 2015, violence had escalated beyond anything the city had experienced. In just 14 months following El Chapo's arrest, La Paz and surrounding areas recorded 183 murders. August 2015 proved bloodiest, with 23 people killed in a single month. This wasn't random violence, it followed patterns indicating organization and purpose. Bodies appeared in specific locations as territorial markers. On one afternoon in July 2015, patrons at a beachside restaurant watched in horror as 2 riders on red motorcycles pulled alongside a black SUV at a stoplight, fired 6 precise shots through the window, then disappeared into traffic before police could respond. These red motorcycles became a signature that spread fear through La Paz. Witnesses reported pairs of riders arriving at murder scenes, executing targets with precision, and vanishing into the city streets. The chaos created opportunities for those who would never have risen to power under normal circumstances. In this extraordinary moment of upheaval emerged Melissa Margarita Calderon Ojeda, known simply as La China. Traditional cartel structure typically limited women to roles in money laundering, occasional drug smuggling, or as companions to male leaders. But within the Lopez Núñez faction, desperate need for loyal commanders opened doors previously closed by the cartel's hypermasculine culture. By mid-2015, La China had seized the opportunity and taken control of an elite unit, Las Fuerzas Especiales de los Damaso, the Special Forces of Damaso. Under her command, this group became responsible for the most brutal acts in the territory war, turning La Paz into a city of terror. The red motorcycles were just one element of her tactical approach to spreading fear. What made La China's rise remarkable was the calculated savagery she employed to secure her position. But who exactly was this woman who stepped into the power vacuum, and how did she transform from an ordinary person into Mexico's most feared female assassin? Her story begins long before the chaos in La Paz, in circumstances that offer clues to the making of a cartel commander, unlike any Mexico had seen before. Born on August 12, 1984, in the coastal state of Sinaloa, Mexico, Melissa Margarita Calderon Ojeda entered a world where the drug trade was already woven into the fabric of society. The region that gave birth to La China also birthed the infamous Sinaloa cartel, but nothing in her early years suggested she would one day become one of its most feared commanders. Her Her childhood photos show an ordinary girl with dark hair and a slight build, no hint of the killer she would become. Little is known about La China's family background or education. This biographical gap reveals something important. She wasn't born into cartel royalty like many who rise to leadership positions. Without the advantage of family connections that commanded respect in the organization, her path to power would be through proving her capacity for violence rather than inheritance. In 2005, at age 21, La China entered the cartel world amid challenging economic conditions in the region. Many young people in Sinaloa faced limited opportunities outside the drug trade, with cartels offering financial security unavailable through legitimate work. The exact circumstances remain unclear. Perhaps a relationship brought her in, or economic pressure forced her hand. She entered at the bottom rung of an organization with rigid gender roles, where women typically handled money laundering, carried drugs as mules, or served as companions to male leaders. Violence, the core currency of cartel power, remained almost exclusively a male domain. For women in this environment, advancement paths were narrowly defined. Some gained influence through relationships with powerful men, others specialized in business operations. La China chose a different path, outperforming men at what they considered their exclusive territory, killing. Her early assignments involved intimidation and minor enforcement. While most recruits approached violence with hesitation or uncontrolled rage, La China's work was calculated and precise from the beginning. She approached murder as a technical problem to be solved efficiently, catching the attention of Damaso Lopez Nunez, a former prison official who had become one of El Chapo's key lieutenants. In her, he recognized someone valuable, an assassin who could kill without machismo-driven displays that often created complications. By 2010, La China had advanced to specialized assassination work. Police reports link her to at least 7 murders in Sinaloa state, each executed with increasing sophistication. In one case, rather than a simple shooting, she orchestrated a complex operation that made a local businessman's murder appear as a robbery gone wrong, temporarily misdirecting investigators. Her methods evolved to include psychological warfare. In 2012, she systematically eliminated a target's entire security team over 3 days before finally killing him, creating mounting dread as the target watched his protection disappear one by one. This psychological dimension became her trademark. The hypermasculine cartel world presented unique challenges for a female killer. La China responded by exceeding male violence rather than mimicking it. Where male assassins killed to prove their manhood, she killed to demonstrate their methods insufficient. She developed torture techniques so extreme that hardened criminals looked away, overcoming gender barriers through intensity. Her relationship with Lopez Nunez evolved from subordinate to protege. By 2013, he granted her control over her own crew of assassins. She commanded higher payment than typical for her position, earned through results that couldn't be ignored. El Chapo's 2014 arrest accelerated her rise. As Lopez Nunez consolidated power, he needed trustworthy enforcers. When he created Las Fuses Especials de los Damaso as an elite killing unit, he made an unprecedented choice, putting La China in charge. This appointment revolutionized cartel culture. A woman now commanded men in the most violent arm of a major cartel faction, earned through competence rather than family connection or romantic relationship. With her leadership secured, La China would develop the brutal operational methods that made her name synonymous with terror in La Paz. The sound of approaching red motorcycles became a death sentence in La Paz. Witnesses described the terror that spread through a room when these distinctive bikes were spotted outside a restaurant or bar. This wasn't just transportation, it was psychological warfare, carefully designed by La China to maximize fear before a single shot was fired. La China understood something fundamental about effective terror. Recognition creates anticipation, and anticipation multiplies fear. By using red motorcycles as her signature, she created a visible symbol that announced her presence, a crimson harbinger of doom rolling through the streets. Citizens of La Paz learned to associate this sight with imminent violence, feeling a cold wave of dread wash over them whenever these motorcycles appeared, wondering if they might become collateral damage in her brutal campaign. Her hit squad typically operated with 2 assassins per motorcycle, allowing quick entry and escape from crowded urban areas. This mobility gave her team significant advantages over rivals who relied on cars or SUVs. The motorcycles could navigate narrow streets, pass through traffic jams, and access areas vehicles couldn't reach. In a documented operation on March 15, 2015, her team used 3 motorcycles to kill 4 members of a rival faction in under 2 minutes, escaping before police could establish a perimeter. The assassinations themselves revealed tactical sophistication. Instead of spraying bullets like many cartel hits, La China's team used precise shots to the head and chest, minimizing ammunition spent and reducing the risk of missing their targets. Victims were typically killed in public places, restaurants, bars, or street corners, maximizing witnesses and spreading her message of power far beyond the immediate victim. La China's tactical innovations extended to personnel. male. She recognized that female operatives could access situations closed to men. One of her most effective assassins was Gabriela Hulzer Lopez, known as La Gaby. Police reports documented how La Gaby would pretend to be drunk outside popular bars, appearing vulnerable. When male targets approached, La China's team would emerge to execute them. This method proved particularly effective against rivals trained to watch for male assassins, but who overlooked women as potential threats. Unlike the loose collection of gunmen used by many cartel factions, La China built a specialized team with distinct roles. Her second-in-command Pedro El Chino Gomez, chief assassin Sergio El Scar Beltran, logistics manager Rogelio El Tyson Franco, and Pedro El Peter Cisneros, who handled body disposal and funding operations. This division of labor allowed specialized expertise to develop, with crime scenes showing increasing sophistication over time. One particularly horrific innovation became her calling card. Rather than simply killing high-value targets, La China ordered certain bodies dismembered. The separated parts would be delivered to the families or associates of the victim with handwritten notes. These messages were psychological operations designed to make enemies believe that no one was beyond her reach. Between January and August 2015, police attributed over 150 murders to her team, with the actual number likely higher. Her hit squad eliminated rival cartel members, police officers, journalists, and government officials who interfered with their operations, creating a sphere of influence where few dared oppose her faction's control. What made La China's approach remarkable was its combination of brutality and calculation. Each element, the red motorcycles, the female assassins, the public executions, the dismemberments, served both practical purposes and psychological objectives. She destroyed her opponent's sense of security, their support networks, and ultimately their will to resist. By August 2015, La China's squad had become one of the most effective killing units in Mexico's cartel landscape. Her tactical innovations transformed what had been a male-dominated field, proving that the most dangerous predator might not be the one you're conditioned to fear. But maintaining control over such a violent organization required more than tactical skill. It demanded a leadership style that inspired both loyalty and terror. How does a woman maintain control over killers in a world where machismo rules? For La China, the answer lay in a management style that matched, then exceeded, the brutality of her male counterparts. She understood that in the hyper-masculine environment of cartel violence, respect wouldn't be freely given to a female leader. It had to be taken through fear. La China created a leadership system built on two pillars: extreme punishment and generous reward. Those who carried out successful hits received immediate rewards, bags of cocaine, cash bonuses, and increased status within the organization. These incentives fostered competition among her assassins, each striving to outperform others to win her favor. Her punishment system truly distinguished her leadership. While male cartel leaders might execute failures with a bullet to the head, La China made examples through dismemberment and psychological torture. When an assassin missed a high-profile target in March 2015, she ordered his body cut into pieces. The parts were delivered to his family home in garbage bags with a note warning others about the price of failure. These tactics created an environment where fear of failure often outweighed fear of death in combat. Her team knew that dying in a gunfight might be quick, but failing La China meant suffering that would extend to their families. Pedro El Chino Gomez, her boyfriend and second-in-command, provided investigators with disturbing insights after his capture. He described La China as maniacal about details and a control freak who demanded to know every movement of her team members. She required daily reports on all operations and would rage if information was withheld, regardless of how minor it seemed. During meetings, La China would quiz lieutenants about specific streets and escape routes, executing those who couldn't answer quickly enough. This calculated approach ensured operational readiness. By creating constant pressure, she forced her team to maintain heightened awareness at all times. Her approach to corruption revealed her leadership philosophy. La China maintained an extensive network of police officers on her payroll, creating personal relationships with key officials rather than treating them as disposable resources. She learned about their families and financial needs, cultivating loyalty beyond simple transactions. This personalized corruption strategy paid dividends. When federal operations targeted her organization, local police provided advance warning. Evidence disappeared from lockups. Witnesses changed statements or vanished. This protection created a buffer allowing her operations to continue despite increased scrutiny. A territorial dispute in June 2015 showcased her leadership style when Lieutenant Rogelio El Tyson Franco expressed concern about escalating violence and threatened to approach authorities. According to El Chino's testimony, La China personally cut off El Tyson's assassin's forearms before killing him and burying his body in an unmarked grave. The message was clear: death was the only exit from her organization. In another power demonstration, she ordered the murder of her chief assassin's favorite prostitute after the woman became uncooperative. This act reminded her team that no relationship was safe from her reach. Even their private lives belonged to La China. This management approach created conflicting emotions. Some members developed fanatical loyalty, seeing La China as their only path to security in the cartel hierarchy. Others harbored deep resentment, obeying through fear while waiting to escape her control. The result was a hit squad unlike any other in Mexico's cartel landscape. Las Fuerzas Especiales de los Damaso became known for both effectiveness and unpredictability. They executed complex operations with military precision, while sometimes engaging in violence designed purely to shock, making them particularly feared among rivals. By mid-2015, La China had transformed a standard enforcement group into one of Mexico's most effective killing units. Through her leadership, she proved that commanding respect in the cartel world wasn't tied to gender, but to a willingness to embrace and exceed the brutality of that world. But La China's iron grip wouldn't just be challenged from within. She was fighting a multi-front war that would push her tactical skills to their limits. By mid-2015, La Paz had become a war zone with 29 murders in September alone. This wasn't random violence or typical cartel conflict. It was La China's calculated campaign to establish total control of the region. What had once been a peaceful tourist destination now resembled a battlefield, with multiple front lines and complex loyalties that shifted almost daily. La China fought a multidimensional war that tested even her tactical abilities. Her most immediate conflict emerged from within Los Damaso itself. A rival group of sicarios led by Manuel El Manny Rodriguez challenged her authority, creating a civil war within the same cartel faction. This internal power struggle turned particularly violent as both sides knew each other's methods, safe houses, and weaknesses. The intra-faction conflict created bizarre situations. Members who had once worked together now hunted each other through the streets of La Paz. Former friends became informants. Sicarios who refused to choose sides often disappeared, their bodies later discovered in shallow graves outside the city. La China responded with targeted assassinations of key lieutenants loyal to El Manny, systematically dismantling his support structure. Simultaneously, La China battled Los Antrax, another Sinaloa cartel hit squad aligned with different leadership. Los Antrax served as enforcers for the faction loyal to El Chapo's sons and Ismael El Mayo Zambada. They carried out specialized hits and provided security for cartel leaders, making them formidable opponents with experience and resources comparable to La China's own forces. The complex politics of the Sinaloa cartel created this deadly competition. What outsiders saw as a single criminal organization was in reality a confederation of semi-independent groups unified only when it served their interests. El Chapo's capture removed the balancing force that had kept these factions in check, allowing old rivalries to erupt into open conflict. Violence escalated dramatically over 5 months. What began as discreet assassinations in April evolved into public executions by June, mass killings by August, and finally, brazen daylight attacks throughout September. "We lived in constant fear," recalled one local shopkeeper. The sound of motorcycles would empty the streets in seconds. La China's signature red motorcycles became psychological weapons. Teams of riders moved through the city conducting surveillance and hits. "Those red bikes meant death was coming," a former resident explained. Everyone knew to get inside immediately when they appeared. The territorial battles focused on areas critical to trafficking operations. La China fought hardest for Puerto Cortés, a small harbor ideal for receiving drug shipments. She also contested San Juan de la Costa, with isolated beaches perfect for launching boats heading north. Within La Paz, El Manglito neighborhood became a bloody battleground, its maze-like streets offering strategic advantages for urban combat. The war transformed La Paz completely. Tourism collapsed as international advisories warned travelers away. Hotels stood empty. Restaurants closed early or shut down. Local businesses installed metal security gates and hired armed guards. School attendance dropped as parents kept children home for safety. La China initially gained the upper hand through superior tactics and unrestrained brutality. Her female assassins caught male-dominated rival groups unprepared. Her willingness to target family members, including those traditionally considered off-limits, created psychological pressure her opponents couldn't match. By early September, she had eliminated several key rivals and secured critical trafficking routes. This unprecedented violence brought unwanted attention. Federal authorities deployed significant resources to the region. The Mexican Navy increased coastal patrols. Federal police established highway checkpoints. Elite intelligence units began surveillance operations operations targeting La China specifically. The heightened federal presence created serious operational challenges. Moving drugs became more difficult. Communication required greater security measures. Safe houses needed frequent rotation. The success that had brought La China to power now threatened that power, as authorities couldn't ignore the spectacular violence that had become her trademark. But while La China focused on external enemies, the greatest threat to her reign of terror would come from someone much closer, the man she trusted most. On September 19, 2015, Melissa La China Calderon approached the security checkpoint at Cabo San Lucas International Airport. She carried herself with the confidence of someone used to moving through the world untouched by consequences. Dressed in civilian clothes with no visible weapons, she looked like any other traveler that morning. What she didn't know was that every step she took was being monitored by federal agents strategically positioned throughout the terminal. Her lover had already sealed her fate. Pedro El Chino Gomez had been La China's boyfriend and second in command. He carried out her orders, shared her bed, and kept her secrets, knowing the locations of bodies, names of corrupt officials, and inner workings of her operation. Captured days earlier, El Chino created a critical vulnerability in La China's security network. Facing decades in prison, he made the decision that would dismantle her entire empire. El Chino provided authorities with devastating intelligence. He revealed multiple clandestine graves containing victims executed on La China's orders, evidence that directly implicated her in specific murders. He surrendered a comprehensive list of corrupt police officers on her payroll, collapsing the protection network that had allowed her to operate with impunity for years. Alvaro de la Peña Angulo, the Secretary General of Baja California Sur, credited the capture to the exchange of intelligence and information between all the integrated agencies of the state. Federal police, Mexican Navy, state authorities, and intelligence services coordinated in real time, sharing resources in an unprecedented joint operation to bring down someone with La China's connections. The airport provided ideal conditions for the arrest. Sunlight streamed through the terminal's glass walls. Travelers rushed past, unaware of the drama unfolding. Metal detectors hummed. Security cameras tracked every movement. The controlled environment with existing security infrastructure meant fewer variables and lower risk to civilians. More crucially, she would be separated from her protective entourage in the screening area. El Chino's betrayal stemmed from complex emotions. Self-preservation played a role, cooperation offered a reduced sentence, but those who interviewed him sensed deeper motivations. He had witnessed firsthand how she treated those who disappointed her. Fear had gradually replaced loyalty. Resentment had grown over her domineering style. El Chino later described her as maniacal and a control freak, revealing the psychological fissures in their relationship. The moment of arrest came with startling simplicity. As La China moved through the security checkpoint, federal agents converged from multiple directions. She offered no resistance. The woman who had ordered countless executions surrendered without a shot fired. Witnesses described a flash of recognition in her eyes, not fear, but cold realization that someone close had betrayed her. The intelligence El Chino provided proved devastatingly accurate. Authorities located 5 bodies in secret graves, murdered weeks before their discovery. Forensic analysis confirmed the brutal methods characteristic of La China's hit squad. Documents seized during the arrest connected her directly to the January 16 homicide in La Paz that had intensified the manhunt. La China became prisoner number 893 at the maximum security prison known as Almoita. For a woman accustomed to absolute control, the rigid structure of prison life represented a particularly harsh punishment. Her capture marked the fall of one of the few women to ever command a cartel hit squad in Mexico. In a criminal underworld dominated by machismo, La China had broken barriers through sheer brutality. Her case forced a reconsideration of gender assumptions within cartel hierarchies. The wave of murders terrorizing La Paz began to subside. Red motorcycles disappeared from the streets. Businesses reopened. Residents cautiously resumed normal activities. While other cartel figures would eventually fill the vacuum, none adopted her distinctive methods or achieved her level of notoriety. The woman who had spread terror throughout La Paz was now headed to Federal Social Readaptation Center No. 1, but her legacy of violence would continue to haunt the region. The story of La China reveals a disturbing truth about the cartel world. For women to lead in this hypermasculine environment, the price is measured in blood and the complete abandonment of humanity. She exceeded the violence of her male counterparts. Her legacy carries broader implications. As Mike Vigil, former chief of international operations at the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, observed, the Mexican drug world is not an equal opportunities employer, and the few women who break the glass ceiling have to be just as vicious and skilled as the men. La China's rise forces us to contemplate whether cartel violence now transcends traditional gender roles, a chilling evolution in organized crime.